Canada is sitting on a golden opportunity, and Trump's tariff tantrum might have just handed it to them on a silver platter. While the world watches Trump's chaotic trade war unfold, Canada has a chance to turn his own weapons against him by offering something no one expects, dropping their own terrible agricultural restrictions in exchange for U.S. tariff reductions. We're talking about Canada's Soviet-style supply management system, a protectionist nightmare that blocks international trade and drives up prices for Canadian families. It's not just about trade barriers. It's about exposing Trump's hypocrisy while solving real problems for consumers on both sides of the border. So, what exactly is Canada's supply management system? And why could dropping it be the perfect countermove to Trump's tariff threats? To understand that, we need to dive into one of North America's most controversial agricultural policies, a system so restrictive that even Canada's own economists call it odious policy. Trump justifies his enthusiasm for prohibitively high tariffs by claiming the U.S. is being ripped off by other countries.
Announcing on Truth Social that starting October 1st, we will be imposing a 100% tariff on any branded or patented pharmaceutical product unless the company is building their manufacturing plant in America. Also, on October 1st, a 25% tariff on all, quote, heavy big trucks made in other parts of the world. And finally, a 50% tariff on all kitchen cabinets, bathroom vanities, and associated products, as well as a 30% tariff on upholstered furniture.
Just this October, he announced sweeping new tariffs, including a 100% levy on pharmaceutical companies unless they build manufacturing plants in America.
But starting today, the United States will no longer subsidize the health care of foreign countries, which is what we were doing. We're subsidizing others' health care, countries where they paid a small fraction of what for the same drug that what we pay many, many times more for, and will no longer tolerate profiteering and price gouging from Big Pharma. But again, it was really the countries that forced Big Pharma to do things that, frankly, I'm not sure they really felt comfortable doing, but they've gotten away with it, these countries. European Union has been brutal.
His administration has also imposed 25% tariffs on heavy trucks and 50% on kitchen cabinets and bathroom vanities. It's a strange argument, since people only trade with one another if they see mutual benefit. But the president does have a point when he complains about other governments imposing their own burdensome trade barriers. The problem is that Trump's solution, slapping massive tariffs on everything, creates more problems than it solves. These announcements have already caused pharmaceutical shares to tumble across Asia, with Japanese companies down over 4% and Australian firms hitting 6-year lows. The market volatility shows how Trump's unpredictable approach is creating economic uncertainty that benefits no one. Instead of this destructive approach, there's a smarter path forward that could benefit everyone involved. Canada could offer to eliminate its own terrible agricultural restrictions in return for U.S. tariff reductions. This isn't some pie-in-the-sky proposal. It's based on solid economic logic and addresses real grievances on both sides of the border. In fact, there have been recent high-level conversations between Canadian officials and President Trump in New York, coinciding with Washington's imposition of these new tariffs on pharmaceutical drugs and other goods.
Immediate lens, Carney says he spoke with U.S. President Donald Trump earlier this week in New York, that meeting coming around the same time Washington imposed tariffs on pharmaceutical goods.
We are, we're engaged with the U.S. In ongoing discussions on some of those specific strategic areas. Those conversations are ongoing. I had a higher level conversation with the president a few days ago.
The latest tariffs would see 100% import taxes on pharmaceutical drugs, along with duties on other kitchen and bathroom items, furniture, and heavy trucks.
Canadian leaders are already discussing the upcoming review of the Canada-US-Mexico agreement, recognizing that securing the best deal while avoiding episodic trade disputes is crucial for both economies. Canada's supply management system is uniquely terrible among developed nations. As Fraser Institute senior fellow Fred McMahon bluntly puts it, supply management is uniquely Canadian. No other country has such a system, and for good reason. It's odious policy favoring an affluent few, burdening the poorest, and creating needless friction with allies and trading partners. This isn't just academic criticism, The system imposes real costs on Canadian families. According to research published in Canadian Public Policy, supply management costs the average Canadian household $444 per year, $585 for families with children, and $378 for those without. That's what Canadians pay for having what critics accurately describe as a Soviet-style supply management system controlling much of their agricultural sector. The system works through agricultural management boards that employ a variety of tools, including quotas and tariffs, and a large bureaucracy to block international and interprovincial trade and deprive Canadians of choice in dairy, eggs, and poultry. Here's where it gets really absurd. Unlike the United States, which doesn't permit states to impose trade barriers on one another, Canadian provinces actually do exactly that. The country's federal government has tried to break down these internal barriers, but progress has been glacial. One study estimates that existing internal trade hurdles cost Canada's economy around $200 billion annually. Think about that for a moment. Canada is literally blocking trade between its own provinces while complaining about U.S. tariffs. It's the kind of economic self-harm that would be comical if it weren't so damaging to ordinary families. Trump has repeatedly targeted Canada's dairy tariffs, claiming they reach 250 to 270%. While Trump's numbers are technically accurate, he consistently fails to mention crucial context. Those high tariffs only apply to imports that exceed predetermined quotas that U.S. exporters aren't even close to filling. As agricultural trade expert Al Mussel explains, in practice, these tariffs are not actually paid by anyone. The U.S. dairy industry itself acknowledges this reality. The International Dairy Foods Association published a statement noting that the U.S. has never gotten close to exceeding the quotas. American dairy exports to Canada were worth $1.14 billion in 2024, making Canada the second largest international market for U.S. dairy products. But Trump's misleading rhetoric about Canadian dairy tariffs misses the bigger picture. The real issue isn't the specific tariff rates, it's the entire protectionist framework that restricts competition and drives up prices. This is where Canada could make a bold strategic move that would completely reshape the trade debate. Instead of getting bogged down in defensive arguments about tariff technicalities, Canada could go on the offensive by offering to dismantle its supply management system entirely. This would be a genuine free trade gesture that would benefit Canadian consumers while removing Trump's main talking point about agricultural trade barriers. The economic case for eliminating supply management is overwhelming. The system has created artificial scarcity in dairy, eggs, and poultry that forces Canadian families to pay inflated prices. It blocks competition from both international and interprovincial sources, creating a protected market for a small number of privileged producers. The human cost of this system extends beyond higher grocery bills. The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development notes that supply management creates barriers to entry for young producers. For farmers wanting to enter the market, the price of purchasing quotas can represent up to 75% of startup costs. This leaves new farmers with crushing debt burdens or effectively excludes them from the industry entirely. Meanwhile, existing quota holders have seen their assets balloon to over $26 billion in value, about 2% of Canada's total GDP. It's a system that enriches established producers at the expense of everyone else. The political dynamics around supply management are shifting in Canada's favor for making this bold move. Many Conservative MPs privately grumble about the system, according to media reports. Former Prime Minister Brian Mulroney has suggested that abolishing supply management would bolster Canada's case for concessions from the U.S. on other trade issues. Even within the dairy industry, there are signs of stress. Fluid milk consumption in Canada has been falling consistently for 20 years. The industry has had to launch new marketing campaigns to attract younger consumers, but demographic trends are working against them. Global milk consumption is declining everywhere except Asia, and Canada's protected market can't insulate producers from these broader shifts indefinitely. The COVID-19 pandemic exposed additional vulnerabilities in the supply management system. When demand patterns shifted suddenly, the system's rigid quotas led to milk dumping and the very waste that supply management was supposedly designed to prevent. Recent controversies like Buttergate, where consumers discovered that palm fats were being used as dietary supplements for cows without their knowledge, have further damaged the industry's reputation. Canadian consumers are increasingly questioning whether they're getting value for the higher prices they pay. This creates a perfect opportunity for Canada to flip the script on Trump's trade war. Instead of playing defense against his tariff threats, Canada could offer a grand bargain: eliminate supply management in exchange for the U.S., dropping its own agricultural subsidies and reducing tariffs across the board. The U.S. government spends more than $30 billion annually on agricultural subsidies, according to the Cato Institute's Chris Edwards. American taxpayers pay for these subsidies through their taxes, then pay again through higher food prices when trade barriers restrict competition. It's the same kind of double burden that Canadians face under supply management, just implemented through a different mechanism. A mutual agreement to eliminate these distortions would benefit consumers in both countries, while removing the trade friction that Trump claims to be addressing. Canadian families would see lower prices for dairy, eggs, and poultry. American taxpayers would save billions in agricultural subsidies. Both countries would benefit from more efficient agricultural sectors that compete on merit rather than government protection. The strategic brilliance of this approach is that it would completely undermine Trump's narrative about unfair trade. How can he complain about Canadian protectionism if Canada is offering to eliminate its most egregious trade barriers? How can he justify his own tariffs if Canada is proposing genuine free trade? Trump has built his trade policy around the claim that other countries are taking advantage of American openness while maintaining their own barriers. Canada could call his bluff by offering to drop those barriers in exchange for reciprocal American action. If Trump accepts, both countries benefit from freer trade. If he refuses, he's exposed as a protectionist who prefers trade wars to trade liberalization. The timing couldn't be better for Canada to make this move. Trump's tariff policies are already causing problems for American businesses and consumers. His 25% tariffs on Canadian goods have disrupted supply chains and raised costs across multiple industries. Even Trump has been forced to grant temporary exemptions for automakers after industry pressure. The volatility and unpredictability of Trump's approach is creating economic uncertainty that benefits no one. By offering a comprehensive solution that addresses the root causes of trade friction, Canada could position itself as the reasonable party seeking genuine free trade, while Trump appears as an erratic protectionist. The proposal would also have international appeal. Other countries dealing with Trump's tariff threats could see Canada's approach as a model for how to respond constructively, rather than simply retaliating with their own barriers. The European Union, Mexico, and other trading partners might follow Canada's lead in offering to eliminate their own protectionist policies in exchange for U.S. tariff reductions. This could create momentum for broader trade liberalization that benefits consumers worldwide. The domestic politics in Canada would be challenging but manageable. Supply management has powerful defenders in the dairy, egg, and poultry industries who have successfully lobbied to maintain their protected status. But these industries represent a tiny fraction of Canada's economy compared to the broader benefits of freer trade. The Trudeau government has already compensated dairy farmers for losses from trade deals, setting a precedent for managing the transition. A well-designed phase-out could provide transition assistance to affected producers while capturing the much larger benefits for Canadian consumers and the broader economy. Public opinion polling suggests that Canadians support financial stability for farmers, but aren't fully educated about how supply management works or what it costs them. A transparent public debate about the real costs and benefits could build support for reform, especially if it's packaged as part of a broader deal to reduce trade barriers and lower consumer prices. The economic modeling is clear. Eliminating supply management would be a net positive for Canada's economy. The annual cost to Canadian households, $444 per family, far exceeds the benefits to protected producers. The $200 billion in economic losses from internal trade barriers alone dwarfs the value of the protected sectors. From a purely economic perspective, this is an easy call, but the political challenge is real, which is why linking supply management reform to U.S. tariff reductions is so clever. It allows Canadian politicians to frame the change as a necessary response to Trump's trade war, rather than an admission that their own policies were wrong. It provides political cover for doing the right thing economically. The international precedent is encouraging. Australia eliminated its supply management system in the 1990s and saw its dairy industry flourish in global markets. The United Kingdom, South Korea, and European Union countries have all moved away from similar systems. Canada would be joining a global trend toward more competitive agricultural markets, not pioneering an untested approach. The technical details of implementation would need careful consideration. A gradual phase-out over several years would give producers time to adjust and allow quota values to decline gradually rather than collapsing overnight. Transition assistance could help farmers adapt to the new competitive environment. Regulatory reforms could ensure that the benefits of increased competition flow through to consumers in the form of lower prices. But these are manageable challenges compared to the potential benefits. Canadian families would save hundreds of dollars annually on food costs. The agricultural sector would become more efficient and innovative without the artificial constraints of quota systems. Trade relationships would improve as Canada demonstrates genuine commitment to free trade principles. The broader implications extend beyond agriculture. Success in eliminating supply management could create momentum for addressing other protectionist policies that harm Canadian consumers. Telecommunications, banking, and other sectors with limited competition could face pressure for similar reforms. The result could be a more competitive, efficient economy that benefits ordinary Canadians rather than protected incumbents. For the United States, a Canadian offer to eliminate supply management would create a genuine test of Trump's commitment to free trade. If he's truly interested in reducing trade barriers rather than just protecting American industries, he should welcome such an offer. If he rejects it, he reveals that his trade policy is more about political theater than economic improvement. The global trade system is at a crossroads. Trump's aggressive use of tariffs has disrupted established patterns and created uncertainty about the future of international commerce. Countries can respond by retreating into protectionism, escalating trade wars, and making everyone worse off. Or they can use this moment as an opportunity to eliminate genuine barriers to trade and create a more open, competitive global economy. Canada has the chance to lead by example. By offering to eliminate its own worst trade barriers in exchange for similar action by the United States, it could demonstrate that there's a better path forward than endless cycles of retaliation and escalation. The choice is clear: continue defending an indefensible system that hurts Canadian consumers while giving Trump ammunition for his trade war rhetoric, or seize the initiative by proposing genuine free trade that would benefit families in both countries. The smart money is on taking the bold step toward real trade liberalization. Trump's terrible tariff strategy has created chaos and uncertainty. Canada could flip the game by offering what Trump claims to want: fair, open trade based on competition rather than government protection. The question is whether Canadian politicians have the courage to put consumers ahead of special interests and call Trump's bluff on free trade. Thanks for watching. If you want to see how other countries are responding to Trump's trade war tactics, check out our other videos. And if you want to stay updated on how global trade relationships are reshaping economic policy worldwide, be sure to subscribe for more in-depth analyses and daily news updates.